Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Tom here, Grumpy Old Guy. Please remember to subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends, comment down below, request any videos you want me to do, hit that notification bell. That way you'll know I'm doing a video. Check out Fan Vote Friday, get to vote on the following Friday video. We're going to do something a little different today. I was reacting to new foods, trying new stuff. I'm the pickiest eater in the world, and it just seems like it's petered out. I don't get hardly any views anymore, so why even bother? So we're going to do something. It's called 13 Things from the 1970s Kids Today Will Never Understand. And yes, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, so I will remember a lot of this stuff. So this is a little nostalgic. So I haven't seen the video, so let's go. Let's check it out.
There are some things that are unique to the decade that we grew up in. The 1970s was no different, having a distinct style that is easily recognizable, even to newer generations. But aside from the obvious disco and bell-bottom trends, there were more minute details that people living during that time will easily recognize. So here are 13 things from the 1970s that kids today would never understand. Options for watching TV were very different during the 1970s. For one, there were really only 3 TV channels plus public broadcasting. That's right, just 3. No streaming services, no endless options. You'd also have to get up and manually turn the dial to change channels. It was a time in which we waited for...
I used to yell for my sister, "Susan, come here." She'd say, "What?" I'd say, "Turn the channel for me."
Our favorite shows, which included nightly shows that were popular and Saturday morning cartoons. It was a big deal when you could pour a big bowl of cereal and binge hours of your favorite animated shows. But with the limited options on the television, it's no wonder kids spent so much time outside. Well, that and the fact that some parents made their kids go outside and play. During the 70s, making a mixtape was an art form. It took patience and dedication to sit by the radio for hours, waiting for the right song to be played. It didn't matter how good your timing was either, because pushing down the play and record buttons at precisely the right time still sometimes had the DJ talking over the intro. And that was just part of the charm. Cassettes had their quirks too, like when they got tangled, and you would have to use a pencil to wind them back in. Cassettes made it pretty easy to create what we know today as a playlist, and this was the first time we could listen anywhere we wanted. Did you ever run around the house and pretend you were Superman or Batman? Well, if you did during the 1970s, then you most likely had on a pair of superhero underoos. For many kids, they served a dual purpose. They were underwear and part of a costume when you were strutting around the house.
I was too old for them in the 70s. By that time I was a teenager. And my sisters had their own stuff, not Superman and stuff. But yeah.
Feeling invincible. Superhero underoos were more than just clothing. They were your identity, especially the ones that matched the actual superhero outfits. Nowadays, kids can never appreciate their underwear in the same way. Recollection Road is proud to partner with Life Story Pro. Watch until the end of this video to learn more about preserving your loved one's stories in a beautifully printed book, which makes the perfect gift. Visit lifestorypro.com/recollection to get started. During the 1970s, record stores were not just places to buy music. They were social gathering spots. Just like the mall of the 1980s, young people would hang out with friends, browse through vinyl records, and even listen to albums before they purchased them. Store employees at this time were also music enthusiasts, and they would recommend hidden gems. It also wasn't uncommon for you to strike up a conversation with a stranger who was into the same music as you. So the local record store was a special place, and yet another experience that is hard to replicate today. Hitchhiking during the 1970s was surprisingly easy and acceptable. It was very common to see people thumbing a ride on the side of the road. Drivers would often not hesitate to pick up hitchhikers, and it was seen as a way to help out a fellow traveler. There was more of a sense of camaraderie on the open road back then, and that's hard to understand in today's world. But it wasn't without risk, and there was still a chance you might encounter a few weirdos, and that was just part of the fun. Nowadays, it's illegal to hitch free rides in many places, but back then, it wasn't unusual to find a service member, a student, or even a hippie thumbing for a ride. When you think back to the 1970s, men had some serious style. They had manly mustaches, sideburns, big hair, and that distinct aroma of aftershave wafting around them. It was all about the macho look, and men took their grooming pretty seriously. This was also coupled with some pretty bold choices in clothing too, and as long as you could leave a couple of buttons undone so you could show off your hairy chest, you were good to go. Nothing quite matches the swagger men had in the 1970s.
Yeah, hairy chests were big back then. Now the guys shave every little inch of them, man. But yeah, the clothes, man, oh man, smoking.
And speaking of grooming, ladies too had their own unique products to give them that 1970s look. Sun-In was all the rage, promising sun-kissed highlights. Women would spray it into their hair and head outside hoping for those perfect golden locks. And who doesn't remember the smell of Love's Baby Soft, a signature scent from the 1970s? The sweet, youthful fragrance was a defining smell that had all the girls wearing Baby Soft. But I'm not sure the ad campaign would fly today. When the telephone that hung in the kitchen rang, it was always answered. This was before caller ID, so people had no idea who was calling. Can you imagine? You didn't know if it was your best friend or a sales call, which meant there was a chance that you might recognize.
I still have the rotary phone like that, and we still have a push-button phone in the kitchen, so it doesn't have caller ID. So if the house phone rings, you have to answer it. Now, cell phone, I have a flip phone, and my wife has a phone, so yes, that'll pop up there. But if someone calls our house, don't know who it is.
Recognize the voice on the other end and spend some time getting twisted up in the phone cord while you talked. Or you might be yelling across the house to let someone else know the call was for them. Today's kids might find it unbelievable that we willingly picked up the phone without the slightest clue as to who was on the other end. To best capture the moments in the 1970s, you absolutely needed a Polaroid camera. The idea of hitting the button and instantly getting a picture developed was gratifying, but you had to be selective because each roll of film only had a certain number of pictures. And then there was the practice of shaking the picture to help it develop faster, which was just a myth. But you couldn't take the bulky Polaroid camera with you everywhere, so there were also photo booths that were strategically placed where teenagers congregated. Places like arcades, malls, and roller rinks were ideal, so best friends and couples could capture the day with a series of goofy and fun pictures. If you were to step back in time and visit a 1970s kitchen, you'd probably find a fair share of mushroom-themed decor. Mushroom plates, mushroom curtains, mushroom wallpaper. They were everywhere. Everything back then seemed to have an earthy aesthetic, and mushrooms must have been the perfect fungus to represent that style. I guess you'd call it charm, and every corner of the room seemed to be inspired by it. As you waited for the weekend and that special morning of cartoons, you also needed a sugary cereal to help you enjoy it. The 1970s was all about finding the best surprise toy inside the cereal box. Kids would beg their parents for a certain brand of cereal, not because of the taste, but because of the toy. It may have been a silly game or a small figurine, but it was like finding a treasure when you dug down to the bottom of the box and pulled out the prize. This excitement made morning cereal more than just breakfast, which is much different than today. Opening a beer or soda can in the 1970s was a bit different than what we are used to today. You'd pull the ring back and peel back the aluminum tab. And back then, most of the tabs were just tossed on the ground. These sharp pieces of discarded metal were a nuisance, especially on beaches or places where you might walk barefoot. These pull tabs were just another hazard that we faced, and the tops would change shortly after to the more familiar stay tab that we recognize today. But it was still all part of the fun of living in the 1970s. Last but not least, school lunch in the 1970s wasn't complete without a trusty metal lunchbox and the matching thermos. These lunchboxes not only showed off our favorite characters from pop culture, but they often also had their fair share of rust on them too. Any ding or scratch would quickly rust over, and our parents didn't seem to mind either. Remember the smell of opening a metal lunchbox after a long, hot day? Kids today, with their ice packs and insulated lunch bags, will never fully understand what it was like to grow up in the 1970s. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and make sure to sign up for the Recollection Road newsletter using...
Oh, that was great. If you're my age, yeah, growing up in the 70s, I was 12 in 1970, so my teenage years and then late teens. And yeah, I didn't have a thermos or lunch. We went home for lunch, and you got an hour for lunch back then. You walked home and walked back. And then when I was in high school, I'd just get something that we didn't even have a cafeteria. You get chips and Pepsi and stuff like that. But so much of that stuff, I remember, just brings back a lot of great memories. Going to the photo booths at Kennywood Park, amusement park, and the pictures, and just so much brings back a lot of memories growing up at that. When you get my age, it's so great to see stuff like this, the Recollection Road. We'll do more, see if how this video goes, if anyone likes it, or if I'm wasting my time with this. So hopefully you'll watch and get some idea what life was like back in 50 years ago. Wow, time went by. So we'll see how we do. As my father always said, hang in there tough, be major league. Till next time, thanks again.